Hi, everyone. Welcome to Sandy K Nutrition, Health and Lifestyle Queen. This is going to be my second last episode until I take a little break over the Christmas holidays. I've decided that December 1st will be my last new episode, and then I'll resume on January the 5th again. I am working on a few projects. Be sure that you're following me on Sandy K Nutrition channels everywhere. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, Threads, Lemonade, TikTok, and of course, my podcast here is available on every podcasting platform. If it's not, let me know because I'm pretty sure that it's everywhere. But it is Sandy K Nutrition on every single platform. So wherever you do social media, you'll be able to find me. Today, my episode is all about doing the work. Okay, let me explain what this is about. Doing the work as it relates to our wellness can mean so many different things. And often you see people who will just follow what all of these health influencers are telling you to do, whether it's take peptides, whether it's take certain supplements, whether it's to take NAD, whether it's to take, to lift heavy or whatever it is that a lot of these health influencers talk about. And often you will hear them regurgitate what the literature says, what the science says, how to age better. And often we hear it become very repetitive. And then what you also see is you will also see some of these health influencers get sick themselves, or some of them have a hero's journey like myself. Most of you know I had thyroid cancer at age 41. I'm now 55, going through menopause without a thyroid gland, which is a whole other category, my friends. But then, if you jump over to the much more spiritual, esoteric side, you'll hear people say, do the work, do the work, do the work. So then you're left going, okay, the hell does that mean? Do the work. And that's where a lot of people will be like, I don't even know what that means. So that's what this episode is all about, my friends. It's all about what that work is. And if you have an interest in that. So, what I will say, and I'm very strong in my opinions is in this, is that unless you do the deeper work, the more spiritual, esoteric, meditative, whatever it is, getting in touch with what's in here, in yourself, in your soul, getting in touch with your soul, unless you do that, you can do all the heavy weightlifting. You can take all the peptides in the world. You can do all the things that all the health influencers tell you to do, intermittent fasting, red light therapy. You could do all of it, but you ain't going to be fully whole. And most of you know, I am a registered holistic nutritionist. I can't even say it. I went back to college when I was 46 years old after having thyroid cancer. But the year prior to that, my 5-year-old daughter was diagnosed with cancer. She's fine now. And I believe that many of our experiences are meant to take us to another level, a different path, whatever it is in our lives. So during that time that my daughter was diagnosed with cancer, I had been a stay-at-home mom. I used to work in business. I do have a degree in English literature. I did write the Essential Thyroid Guide right behind me, in case if you're wondering. It's all about what this gland means. It's not a clinical book. It is a book It's a guide, simplified guide, just to tell you why this gland is so important and why you want to do all you can to keep it, unlike myself. But back then, I didn't have the tools, I didn't have the knowledge, I didn't have the experience. So now, one thing that I did dabble in ever since my daughter was diagnosed with cancer was more the like doing the work. And it started very slowly for me. I come from a Catholic upbringing. However, during that time, I didn't really find the answers that I needed through religion. And I am not shaming anyone for having a strong conviction in their religious belief. I, quite frankly, I don't care what you believe in. What I care about is if you're a good person. Be a good person. Be good to others. Be kind. That's all I care about. So, my exploration in doing the work actually began with feng shui. I was like, damn, like, is the energy in my home bad? Is that why, you know, we had cancer? Is this maybe something I need to explore? And I actually became a student of feng shui. I would map my home every year. I would purchase these little cures that were feng shui cures to keep the energy in the certain locations, north, northeast, west, southwest, all the areas of my home. I still record a podcast every year. I may not this year, by the way. And you know why? This is the first year that I stopped. So remember, my daughter was diagnosed with cancer in 2010. I was diagnosed with cancer in 2011. And by the way, my husband coded in hospital from a bacterial pneumonia in 2012. It was 3 years of some not so great things going on. And for a while there, I was like, oh, maybe it's all about the energy. Maybe it's the fact that I was doing renovations during years where they say don't do renovations in feng shui. And I'm like, okay, so I was trying to do the work. And so this goes back so long ago, my friends. And again, I don't think there's anything wrong with feng shui. I think that most of our beliefs in doing the work, though, come from within us. We need to start with what's in here, our soul. And so that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. And the reason I am going to talk about this is because on TikTok, on Instagram, you will hear extremes. So you will hear somebody talk only about astrology. While I do look at astrology and I do believe that when we are born, depending on what was going on in the atmosphere, might have something to do with our personality traits, how we are. But a lot of that really boils down to interpretation, right? But we can't deny the fact that we are affected by what is in our atmosphere. I mean, take a look at the energies that have been going on lately. And my friend Brenda Faruja, by the way, I always give her a plug because she has equipped me with so much empowerment that comes from within me that I cannot have a conversation like this without talking about her. Go to sobrilliant.ca and look at working with her. And I've recorded a few podcasts with her. She has changed my life. She is actually one of the reasons why I have brought more power within me versus giving power outside of me. And that's a big takeaway that I would love for all of you to have from this conversation. Now, back to the whole point about I think we would be almost naive to believe that what goes on in our atmosphere doesn't have an effect on us. So, with astrology, I do believe that we may have certain traits depending on where all the planets were when we were born. I don't believe in just looking at your sun sign. And I also don't believe that somebody could have that much power over us and our future and predictions based on astrology alone. So, for example, I'm going to go back to this whole thing. I think we would be naive to believe that what is in our atmosphere has no effect on us. Take a look at one example. One example, the Suez Canal. There it was a few years ago. Look it up, Suez, Suez, the Suez Canal. There was a ship that was stuck there, and they had to wait until the full moon and the tides to rise in order for that ship to become dislodged. So think about that in and of itself. How powerful that is, that the moon, when it's full, it can actually raise the tides all over the world. So just use that one example and hang with me for the rest of this. I am going to tell you, because I don't believe enough people do, I did use ChatGPT for this conversation in order for me to structure it in such a way that you'll be able to follow along and get it. And then maybe get some little nuggets and some takeaways that you can use yourself to figure out how to do the work with what resonates for you, as opposed to me dictating what I think you should do. Now, it all starts, there's 8 categories. And yes, I use ChatGPT to help me categorize everything simply. So the first one is doing inner work, and that could be shadow work, emotional healing. We hear a lot about doing inner work, but we don't do it enough. So, what do? You go to work every day. How often do you sit in a state during the day without your phone, without your email, without chatting with somebody, without working on a project? Probably most of you don't, right? So, it's kind of hard to do that during the day when you're at work. However, when you get home, what do? You maybe deal with the kids, deal with your dog, start dinner, right? Then maybe you go for a walk. Maybe you do something in between that's for yourself, but you're probably cleaning up after dinner or whatever. Then you flop on the couch. Maybe you're scrolling and you're watching your favorite show on Netflix. And then you think, damn, did I even take 15 minutes for some inner reflection? Probably not. And we live in this world where somebody is constantly pinging us, or there's some sort of a distraction constantly. And I'm going to tell you that one of the things that I do every single day, unless there's something that comes up that I can't, is I spend about 30 minutes a day walking in nature with my dog, with no earphones, nothing playing, no distractions, and I pay attention to my surroundings. I pay attention to the birds. I pay attention to, like, whatever. I am fully present. And what happens is that in and of itself can be doing some inner work. Sometimes when I'm doing that walk, I work on negative beliefs. And my friend Brenda taught me this. There are 3 phrases. Her and I have talked about this in our recordings. And it's not woo woo either. This is neuroplasticity. It's to help rewire negative beliefs. And it's often something that we don't even realize um, are these negative belief programs running in our background that can cause a lot of issues in our life. So I'm going to give you those 3 phrases. And I do this whenever I feel a little off. So the number one thing is you got to know how you're feeling. And if you're constantly distracting yourself with something, maybe you're talking on the phone, listening to a podcast. I want you to listen to my podcast, but don't do it when you're going on a walk in nature. Do it while you're cooking dinner. How about that? So the three phrases are I feel is the number one. So I'm going for a walk. And let's say I had an interaction with somebody that made me really upset. And I'm going to use the feeling anger. So I feel angry. And I feel angry because I choose to. And I feel angry because it serves me to feel that way. Those are the three phrases. I feel, I choose, and I feel because it serves me to feel this way. And then you stop and you reflect and you go, huh, certainly doesn't serve me to feel angry. Why would I possibly think that's so illogical? It doesn't serve me to feel that way. And I go through various phrases, but specifically in how I'm feeling. So that I call my negative belief walk. Another walk that I might have might be my walk, gratitude walk, where I go on a gratitude walk and I sometimes I talk out loud. I mean, I don't really care. People can think I'm crazy. They don't know if I have like a little Apple AirPod in my ear, right? So I'll sometimes go on a gratitude walk where I think and feel and talk to myself about everything I'm grateful for. Sometimes I actually speak with my guides, and that might be my spirit guides, my angel guides, archangels, whatever you believe in, God, the universe, I don't care. Have a chat with whoever you resonate with or believe in. So, those are ways that I use it. So, here I'm going to give you now what ChatGPT said. This inner work can mean emotional processing. So, I just gave you a few examples. Journaling, stream of consciousness writing. Oh, that's one of my things. This is my jam. So I will sometimes want to journal in the morning and I go through phases. And this is what I mean. I'm constantly changing it up, my friends. I'm constantly doing the work, but I'm changing it up. So sometimes I will write a prompt in my journal and it will simply be, and this is something that I've been doing for years. What does my soul want me to know today? And then I let it fly, whatever it is. Do not type. Use I'm a lefty, by the way, um, handwrite it in a journal. And that is called stream of consciousness writing. Just let whatever comes top of mind go from from heart to pen to paper. Try it. Now, some more emotional processing might be release techniques. Shaking. You see people who do that. There are platforms based on that. Movement. That's big. Crying, screaming into a pillow, inner child work. So look that up if you're not sure what that is. Shadow work, identifying triggers. This is massive, my friends, because we live in a world where everybody seems to be triggered, especially everybody on social media. So when you identify your own triggers and go, that really triggered me, and you dig deeper into that, that, my friends, is doing the work. So typically, we can say that when you have a trigger, it's because it's something that's not fully processed in your body. And I don't know, I can't answer for you what it would relate to. But if you're one of these people that's starting fights or, on social media or constantly interjecting where people are not asking for your opinions, like figure out why you're doing that. Forgiveness and integration. Okay, this is big. And I'll tell you why. I have a real difficult time with forgiving. And I sometimes, okay, it depends on the situation and it depends on if it's repetitive. but I have a hard time with this. This is one of the things that I really have a hard time with. Meditation on releasing the resentment and shame and guilt is huge for doing that work. And Brenda has taught me a few different techniques, including the whole, um, negative beliefs, because shame comes often from these negative beliefs that were formed and could have been formed from when you were a young child. So, doing that kind of work is very powerful. And Brenda does do sessions. They're called beam therapy, BEAM. And this is using quantum energy, and your own higher self is in charge. So, this is what I'm talking about. When you give all your power away to this health influencer, this tarot reader, this astrologer, this person who's telling you to intermittent fast, you are taking away power that you have within you. It's not to say that we can't research, look at what other people are doing and say, that resonates with me. But the whole thing is you got to turn inward. And I've written about this. There's a great documentary. It's not really well made, but it's called Inner Worlds, Outer Worlds, where we have become so out of touch with our inner selves and giving our power away all over the place. It's like we're spewing out all our energy everywhere and going, I need this from this person. I need this from this person. We forget to look within ourselves. So, Brenda does facilitate something called beam therapy, where it's your higher self that clears some of these limiting beliefs, these traumas, all of these things that might be holding you down. And I'm going to touch on more about this throughout, but you're the one who's in charge. So most of you have heard of Reiki. You know what? I've somehow never really resonated with Reiki because I felt like that person was in charge of me, which made me almost uncomfortable. And that's not to say if you're a Reiki therapist, you know, I'm not putting you down. This is me. This is my belief system. So more inner work can relate to trauma release using somatic and trauma informed therapy. I personally have done EMDR. I know that some brain doctors, like Dr. Amen, he has the Amen clinics everywhere. He's a big fan of EMDR for trauma. So I think that you have to explore which of these practices make sense for you. I did EMDR for a short period of time this year because I really needed to release some stuff that kept coming back in my brain over and over and over again. So look for a practitioner, look for somebody who can help you with this stuff because I'm not it. I'm not it. I'm just giving you the options, but if you need help, seek somebody who's um, definitely someone you can trust within this area and who's qualified. So that was inner work. That was kind of a long one. The second one is mind and thought transformation. And this again is more through meditation and mindfulness. I've been doing meditation, God, for so many years. I used to use Muse, the meditation headband. That was probably about close to 10 years ago. Um, then there's reframing and cognitive practices. So I did do some mind therapy training back a while ago. I found it to be like common sense. So I never completed the certification. And then there's self-inquiry, and that goes to the journaling and all of that. It's kind of similar to the first one. So the third one is energy and subtle body work. So chakra and energy clearing. So that could be the Reiki thing that I talked about, perhaps you'd rather move into beam therapy where it is clearing those energies from you, but you're the one who's in charge. Your higher self. By your higher self, I mean your soul. And as Brenda explains it, your soul knows where you've been, where you're going, what you've experienced, all of your traumas, all of your past lives. Your soul knows this. And that's why when you put your own soul in charge to release things, it's the best thing for you. Trust me on that, you guys. So then there's stuff like, crystals, there's sound therapy. I have singing bowls and um, sometimes I'll go through my home, I'll use my singing bowls because sound can be very powerful to clear energy. Then there's movement-based energy work. Listen, that's the whole dance. And this might sound a little bit repetitive. There's yoga, tai chi, breath focused. I did a very powerful breathing exercise. Oh God, what were they called? Mm. I don't know if I can remember, but it was that kind of, I don't even know what it's called. It's that breathing breath work where it's very fast and you almost get anxious and you have to get past that. And I did it with one of my good friends. She is on Instagram, the energy pharmacist, Sudine. Anyway, I love her. She's amazing. I met her a few times and we did this in Boston when I was speaking, lecturing at a conference. And all of us in the audience were like in tears. It was just very powerful, powerful release. So there are some very cool things that you can do, and you have to choose what resonates. So then there's creative and expressive pathways. And, that could be painting, writing, music, movement, self expression. And, you look at a lot of what's going on social media, and it's like people copying each other or people regurgitating, the science. And you kind of wonder, and you're like, where's the creativity in that? You're just copying and pasting. And so when we do something that is creative, it just makes our soul sing, then we come alive. So one of the things I am an English graduate, English literature graduate, and I love to write. By the way, you can follow me on Substack. I have short explorative essays on wellness. So it's sandycruz.substack.com. A lot of this stuff is free. So join me there if you like to read. But we need to be sure that we are tapping into whatever that creative aspect to have our higher self and our soul sing. We got to tap into that, whatever it is, because we all have it. You hear some people say, "Oh, I'm not creative." Well, that's not true. There's always going to be some aspect to us, and it's really finding whatever that is and tapping into that and doing it because it brings your soul alive when we do it. So, storytelling, I love that. So, that's why I podcast. I love to tell stories. I might, even on Instagram, sometimes like I've had people make fun of me because I might dance or I might, express something and talk about why, standard thyroid labs don't work. You see what I mean? So I'm kind of mixing what makes my soul sing with some of the science and some of my experience and some of my hero's journey, which is storytelling. That's so powerful for me personally as part of my expression. And, that's why I'm going into 6 years for my podcast because I love to do this. So the other thing is we need to tap into our rituals. Rituals. Wow. What are the things that, your mom and dad might have done every year at Christmas? Tap into that. Do that yourself. Rituals bring us alive, bring bring energy and memory and all of those things together. So, one of the things that I did, my girlfriend was over this week and she's like, "What's that big jar sitting there on your wall unit?" And in it are a bunch of little pieces of paper. And you know what they are? They're memories. They're memories for so many years that every once in a while I'll pick out of one of the papers to read it, and it might be about how we used to do movie night as a family. And my daughter used to do seating arrangements, and she would make out tickets, like she would make tickets for everybody, and we would watch Big Brother. And so that was one of my family rituals, and I made sure that we will never forget it by creating this big jar with these memories. So I think that when we do that, that is really, really sacred. And it's something that can really empower us, especially when we look back. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Relational and karmic work. Okay. So this is big. We hear this a lot about boundaries and relationship healing. So most of you who follow me probably have heard of Carolyn Miss or Mice. I don't know how you pronounce it, Myss. I've read a few of her books and I read them when I was a student. Then I've read them even before I went back to college. And she talks about sacred contracts. There's a reason why these contracts are sacred. And often when we're watching all the TikToks about cutting people off and telling them, you know, you are not supporting my boundaries. I don't want to move forward with you in this life. I resent my parents. So it kind of goes against everything that I talked about in the beginning. This is why social media can be damaging if you give all your power away to it. I believe that setting boundaries are extremely important. And I believe in renegotiating sacred contracts in our lives versus cutting off sacred contracts in our lives. What do I mean by that? So, I have been married for over 25 years. It's going to be 28 years this month since we met. And I believe that in a marriage or a partnership, it's constantly meant to evolve and change. And sometimes renegotiating those sacred contracts in your partnership can be really hard. If you can see it to the other side, that partnership can be more powerful than you could have ever imagined. But sometimes the work and renegotiating those contracts can be too hard for some. And that's when these partnerships can dissolve. That's when these friendships can dissolve. Sometimes the work is too hard. And so you say, I've just got to leave. And so that's why I don't judge you or anyone for that. But I try to make it work. And I try to negotiate these contracts that are sacred to me to make them work for both parties. So that the bottom line is you want to feel peace within in these sacred contracts, and you want to experience joy and support. So there you go. So we do need to be able to assess toxic behaviors from others, but we can't make others change. But what we can do is change ourselves. And that, my friends, is one of the most powerful things you can do. When you stop laying blame on everyone and everything around you, your relationship with everyone around you can change and elevate to a very powerful, powerful level. So, my friend Brenda talks about this. The only thing you can do is do the work yourself. And often, what you'll see is you'll see a cascade happen of positive effects in your relationships around you when you do the work, right? So, as opposed to trying to make everybody change around you, you do the work yourself. And naturally, these changes happen for the better. So, one of my biggest downfalls, and I know this about myself, is expectations. And I'm still working on it. I'm certainly far from perfect in this area, but I will often expect others to behave in a way in which I would behave. That doesn't serve me most of the time. So then what happens is I got to go back and do more work on myself in order to let that expectation go. So that's just some food for thought for those of you who think that, so many of your relationships around you must dissolve in order for you to be happy and move forward in your life. But there's one thing that we know. I do follow the blue zones. I follow a lot about longevity and health span, is we must be in community with others. And while that community may not always be harmonious, the harmony comes from in us, not controlling what everyone else is doing and how everyone else is treating you. So, this to me is one of the hardest aspects of doing the work. And this is something that I personally need to work on a lot. So, integration practices. So this is daily. So having those morning and evening rituals. So I used to be a big, sauna girl. I would do infrared sauna, red light. That was just part of my health ritual. Now I have shifted more towards grounding, intention setting, journaling. Not saying that red light therapy is not important, but remember, this is about doing the work more on a spiritual internal level. So, micro practices throughout the day, 3 to 5 minutes of mindful breathing. And that could be breathing however you choose. One of the standard ways, oh my God, it was Dr. Andrew Weil. I told my kids about this when they were little. 4-7-8. You see people doing all kinds of breath work stuff. So, how about you start with something simple? 4 minutes in, 7 minutes hold, 8 minutes out. 4-7-8, and do that 5 times, and do that a couple times a day and see how that breath work helps you. Okay? And when you're doing that, you might notice certain triggers. You might notice more things kind of come to mind because you're not looking at your phone, you're not looking at your email, you're not talking to a friend, you're not doing anything during that. So even if one takeaway from this podcast is doing 4-7-8. Try it. Start there and walk every day. So now this is the very last category I'm going to get to, and this is called advanced and high vibration work. So lucid dreaming and dream work. I did record a podcast about dreaming, and I'm going to tack onto that. I also recorded a podcast about symbols. So it's so interesting when you start to pay attention to symbols that repeat in your life. So, for example, you might notice you're going for a walk, and I'm going to start with symbols and then we're going to get into dreaming, okay? Because it all kind of connects. Let's say you're going for a walk and you see a snake. And you don't normally see snakes in this area. It's not common. That in and of itself might be a symbol for you to take note of. Now, Was the snake more aggressive? Was the snake just kind of slithering by? Was the snake, did it block your path? And all these things, when you see how you felt about that snake, that, my friends, is your answer on what that symbol means for you, to you. Now, we know in general, a snake is about shedding its skin. Maybe that's, shedding your skin, new life, whereas somebody else might be like, oh my God, I'm terrified of snakes. And that snake actually had its like head up, like it was going to attack me. Well, that might mean something very different for you. So even though there are books about symbols, you can look at the symbol in a general sense, but then see how it really relates to you and your own higher self. And that takes a reflection, that takes personal interpretation, and that takes how does my soul tap in to what that symbol might have meant. I use nature a lot as symbols. For me, coyotes, they can mean a couple of different things, but when I come across a coyote, I need to kind of, you know, be more attentive to what might be going on in my life. When I see a cardinal, that's typically a sign for me from somebody from the other side, like my aunt, my mother-in-law. So I wanted to say, when you do that nature walk and you're walking along and you notice these things because you don't have AirPods in your ear and you're paying attention to these symbols all around you. It's really cool. Let me tell you, it gives you inspiration. And remember, I was talking about how feeling inspired and creative, whatever that outlet is, when you pay attention to that, that all connects, my friends. So feeling inspired is very, very powerful. So dreams, a lot of you can really explore the subconscious through your dreams. And some people will do that. Right now, I'm not really doing that. I have done that in the past where I've written it down. Oh my God, I woke up at 3 in the morning and, you know, it was a dream about this or that. And I got to write this down or I'm going to forget. That's okay. Do that. And then maybe in the morning, when you read it and go, oh, wow, how do I feel in that dream? What do I think about that dream? And it's kind of cool because sometimes that will give you clues into your subconscious. So, another part of vibration work might be a retreat, um, you know, just for inner clarity. If you need that sense of guidance, periods of silence, fasting, resetting the senses, these are all really deep work. Then there's, plant medicines. Of course, I've recorded a couple of podcasts about that. You know, Sometimes plant medicines can be helpful for those people who have experienced extreme trauma, who are unable to really tap in. Make sure that you speak with somebody who um, can really guide you and has experience in this and training in this. Because the one thing I do know is that sometimes it can force your higher self, meaning your soul, to tap into things or bring up things that you may not be ready to do or to bring up, I should say. So remember how earlier I was talking about how when your higher self is in control, it can release things that it's ready to release. It knows where you've been, knows where you're going, knows your past, knows your present, knows everything. Your soul knows you better than anybody. And so when you're forcing a release through plant medicines, sometimes it can force things so assertively that your body isn't caught up to that yet. So I've heard stories where people come back after an ayahuasca retreat and, they blow up their lives, they blow up their marriage. Like, just proceed with caution in this area because you definitely want to have somebody who's really, really trained and experienced in this area. So, that, my friends, was my episode on doing the work. I hope that was helpful. I hope that during this holiday season, you'll be able to take some quiet time for reflection so that you can do the work. But what I can say is start with whatever resonates. And yeah, I mean, I've been doing it for a very long time. I seem to get connected with people like Brenda who help me really progress to the next level. I don't think that our doing the work ever stops. You don't reach this peak and then go, okay, I'm done. You don't. You have to do the work forever. And it's always evolving and always changing. But when you can tap into your soul, your higher self, it can be very powerful as not only a manifester, you hear about manifesting all the time, but just to help you on your soul's path while you're here on earth. So, do me a favor, make sure that you hit follow and subscribe wherever you are listening to this podcast and share it with a friend because we all want to age better together, but we need to explore everything outside of, just the regular stuff like lifting weights and taking supplements. And, while all those things are important, we got to explore our inner landscape as well. Be sure that if you are listening on Apple or Spotify and this podcast really, really helped you, please provide me with a rating. So 5-star and a few kind words, just some words, just so that other people can find me and amongst this massive, world of podcasting. So I'm grateful for you. I thank you. And if you want to get in touch, if you want to be part of my podcast, send me an email, sandy@sandyknutrition.ca. Also, if you are interested in partnering from a business standpoint, get in touch. Thanks, guys. Have a great week.